Namaskar and a hearty welcome from the Natya Institute of Kathak and Choreography, the MMK Arts Trust and the Natya STEM Dance Company to the Dr. Maya Rao Kathak and Choreography Conference 2020. In its digital avatar this year, this conference is in the memory and celebrates the life and art of Dr. Maya Rao, Guru Maya Rao, Maya Didi, Maichka, Ma, a woman to whom life was a sanchari and dance her leitmotif. Performances, illustrative lectures, interactive panel discussions and more. This year's conference focuses on the reinvention and reframing of the performing arts post-COVID-19. We have for you now the wonderful, renowned performer, choreographer, very prolific writer, arts entrepreneur and curator, Dr. Anita Ratnam, who's the Vice Chairperson of the Natya Institute of Kathak and Choreography. The inaugural address by Dr. Anita Ratnam.
Namaste. Welcome to the second annual Guru Maya Rao Conference of Kathak and Choreography. I'm Dr. Anita Ratnam, and it is with immense pleasure that I will share my keynote address with all of you. Dance is our breath, our prana. Without it, we cannot live or move. And now we are all at peril. Dancers everywhere, across the globe. So as we gather in a new and unfamiliar way, without being able to touch one another, put a friendly arm around one another's shoulder, admiring our new clothes, and wondering how quickly a whole year has passed since last year's unforgettable event, let us pause for a moment and remember why we have gathered through the wonder of technology. This conference, spread over 2 evenings, is to mark the spirit of a remarkable woman, a sensitive teacher and inspired choreographer, Guru Maya Rao, or Maya Di, as she was called lovingly by so many. Her keen eye, her gentle smile, her sudden laugh, the layers would gently peel away. Whenever we met, she always had a kind word, a positive thought to share with me. Maya Di's world had so many interests, not just dance. Her life was quilted with the many strands of music, literature, books, textiles, poetry, philosophy, and of course, dance. A true Renaissance woman. It was Guru Maya Rao who brought Kathak to South India. She never stopped dreaming, creating, ideating, and choreographing until her last breath. We shared many common interests, and among the top was Russia. Mayadi's memories of this former communist country was not about strict rations or empty shelves. It was about the dedication and discipline of the dance students. The Russians' adoration and respect for their classical ballet dancers left a deep impression on Guru Maya Rao, And we spoke often about those complicated Russians and their extraordinary country, often over a glass of gin and tonic or a sherry. It is with this spirit that I invite you all to join us for the next 2 days. Perhaps this is one of the first Indian dance conferences to be completely ideated, curated and shared across digital platforms. Instead of the warmth of a human presence, we are left with the cold, unblinking eye of a camera and our flat screens. But this we must accept and befriend. And through its unblinking optic, we must discuss, talk, think, debate, and comment. We are all in a flux. There are no clear answers, no clear direction. What will happen to the live arts, of which dance is such an important part? When can we return to the rehearsal studios? When can we meet our colleagues? How can we create if confined and isolated? How can we sustain our bodies and our spirits? I have no easy solution, but please know that you are not alone in this whirlwind of uncertainty and doubt. Because perhaps for the first time in the history of the human race, every dancer in every country, in every city across the planet is faced with the same grey curtain of unanswered questions. So what do we do next? Our first thought should be to look beyond ourselves, beyond dance, because our colleagues in the smaller towns and villages are in great danger because of the coronavirus. Folk artists, temple artists who are entirely dependent on festivals and seasonal celebrations are facing starvation and ruin. And so, Madhu Natraj, inspired by her mother, Guru Maya Rao's keen vision to create an entire ecosystem around the dance world, has launched a fundraising drive. She has pledged to collect 6 lakhs towards helping folk artists in Karnataka with a monthly stipend for 6 months. So we draw your attention to this noble cause. Please be generous and please know that no amount is too small. The 2-day conference has been conceived and ideated in a very crisp and innovative way. 2 evenings, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on May 1st and 2nd. And on each day, you will see some performances, listen to eminent panelists, and also have enough time for a question and answer session. Guru Maya Rao must be remembered for her pioneering pathways. It was she who arranged the Kathak repertoire as a template from Vandana to Tarana. So perhaps we can engage during this conference and think of ways in which we can reframe dance and the live arts in this dramatically altered landscape. To gurus, teachers, dance students, dancers, rasikas and lovers of dance and the arts, welcome. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Anita Didi, for your inspiring presence and for your fondness for Mayaji, which came through clearly in your address. This evening's opening performance is by an internationally acclaimed, the very luminescent, virtuoso Kathak performer Aditi Mangaldas. Aditi had initial training in Kathak by Mas Guru Ben Kumudini Lakhiaji of the Kadam Center in Ahmedabad. She then moved to Delhi where she studied with Pandit Birju Maharaj, and she is the founder of the Drishtikon Dance Foundation, through which she has performed, choreographed, birthed new productions the world over. Aditi is known for her brilliant dancing trajectory as well as path-breaking choreographies, where she's also mentored some wonderful Kathak dancers who are on the horizon now. We are very thankful to Aditi for presenting this tribute and a part of a choreography for the Dr. Maya Rao conference. Thank you, Aditi.
Namaskar. I would like to thank Madhuji to have invited me to present a short extract of my work online for the Dr. Maya Rao Kathak and Choreography Conference, which is held in the memory of the great Guru Maya Raoji, who had the courage and the conviction to discover her own journey, her own path. And I think that has given courage to us as women artists over the generations, has inspired us also to find our own journey within the classical format of Kathak, or even going beyond that. What I present today is a short extract of Widening Circles, which is based on the concept of Pratitya Sannutpada. That is because this is. And from Widening Circles, I have chosen a short extract from The Sun, which is about the grand and the great sun, connected to the beautiful and delicate lotus.
dha, takita dikita tak, dikita tak, dikita dha, 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 takita dikita tak, dikita tak, dikita dha, ta, dha, ta, dha, ta, dha, ta, dha.
Namaskar. Welcome to this panel discussion of the Dr. Maya Rao Kathak and Choreography Conference 2020. It will resonate with most of you when I said that those who choose the performing arts as a passion, more importantly, a career, are a brave bunch. And it is from that day onwards, we also take on an eternal dance partner called resilience. Given the gravity of the present scenario, this panel discussion is aptly named Reimagining Resilience. As we speak, a third of the global population is working from home. Many have already lost their jobs. COVID brought our lives as performing artists to a standstill. Institution owners, performers, educators, curators, production designers, all of us are affected. So, how do we place the performing arts in this scenario? To discuss these thoughts, we have a stellar panel today with us, and I'd like to introduce them to you. We have the brilliant Mahesh Vitani, who needs no introduction, but I will still give him a really short one. Mahesh is a hugely feted playwright, theater practitioner, filmmaker, and dancer. He's been a dancer and mentor to many. Lynn Fernandez, who heads Nrityagram, who's a curator, production designer, and known for her path-breaking curation and organizational skills. Shivani Wazir Pasreech, the gorgeous dancer, lawyer, presenter, educator, and as I like to call her, an intersectionist. The economic impact of COVID on the arts and culture industry globally runs into millions of dollars. The future is rife with doomsday philosophies about financial and emotional carnage. Yet we surface out of these turbulent times. We, after all, are the resilient bunch. So with that, I welcome you again on board. Thank you so much, Mahesh, Shivani, and Lynn for being with us. I would like to ask each of you to share how we view these times and your survival mantra, so to speak. Could we start with you, Mahesh?
Sure. Thanks, Madhu. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of the resilient bunch. Um, well, a couple of years ago, this is obviously in the pre-COVID era, I visited Anne Bogart's City Company in New York, in Manhattan, and they use a lot of very, very rigorous Suzuki training where the body is really sort of pushed to the limit. And I was struck by a remark that one of the instructors made. She said, the body in crisis is very interesting to watch, right? And I agree, because not just the body in crisis, but what the body does to overcome that crisis becomes hugely important and therefore artistically relevant. So today, I guess the body is in crisis, but it's not as a result of rigorous training. It's not a neuromuscular crisis, but it's the crisis involves the very air that we breathe. And I think it's going to be a very, very long time before we trust this air in a social space. And social space or space is really what defines us as artists, because what is it that we have that the cinema, medium of cinema, or the digital media cannot offer, that is that we share the same time and space with our audiences. And I think that's the unique quality of the performing arts. So now, what do we do when that very space has been taken from us? It's like we've lost 90% of our canvas. So what are we going to paint on? In fact, what we do now in this moment of the body being in crisis is going to define the future of not just art, but the makers of art, and even as a culture. And if I may sort of add, if it's not too overblown, the future of civilization itself. So we are definitely at a turning point. What's around the corner actually is something we can only speculate and surmise. And as artists, especially, we've always had our insecurities. Be it fragile egos, be it whatever, petty vanities or whatever. And yes, occasionally we've risen above that to make some art, right? But even there, the divide has been very clear that for some of us who have the wealth and the resources, the concerns have been more to do with form and content. And for many of us who do not have the resources and who are poor, the concerns are very much of subsistence, right? So this is already a situation that we've had for thousands of years. So now, what is this new situation going to do with this in this post-viral era? And this period has been thrust upon us. It came from as a bolt from the blue. It's not as if we slipped into the modern era and then the postmodern era. And it's not as if these eras that were defined by intellectuals and artists. This definition has been thrust upon us. Nobody wanted a post-viral, post-COVID era, but it's here. So I think it's going to take a while before we embrace the truth that there's no looking back, like that there's no going backwards. But at the same time, I think as artists, crisis is something that has fed us, that's fuel to our creativity as well. We perform best, we create best when there is adversity, not just in our lives, but even in our artistic world, especially in drama. A crisis is what actually unfolds the story. That's when you could say the story has really begun. So yes, it sounds very doomsday, but I think there's a lot to be gained. There are plums to be plucked out of this period of hibernation. Because as performing artists, we are hibernating right now. There is, of course, the thing that we represent ourselves digitally, but then that is a representation of our work. It is not the representation of our art, And so it's a wonderful document. It's a wonderful period of transition where we can sort of remember our art, that the memory of our art remains in our bodies and in our feelings and in our emotions till we come back again and trust the space. So to sum it up, I think this is a very interesting time. We don't know what the outcome is. It need not all be negative. Who knows, maybe the traditional hierarchies may crumble. Maybe not entirely, but at least 2,000 or 3,000 years of having social inequity. Suddenly we're even discussing that how do we deal with this kind of social inequity. I think that's a very positive sign. I think as artists, we've learned to reinvent ourselves. And this is, I think, the greatest reinvention that we as performing artists may have to make. So it's very exciting. And I think we should take the challenge head on There are no easy solutions. It's too early to think of solutions, if you ask me, but that's my opinion. But I feel that, the subject of this conference is resilience. And I don't think that should be taken cynically at all. That yes, we will bounce back, but what are we going to do? We have to reinvent ourselves, because when we come back, uh, the world is completely different. So where do we go from here is something it would be very interesting to discuss with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. And so beautifully put. I was just reminded also when you said that adversity is what fuels a script, for example, from your script writing classes. And also, Maya ji always, when she taught how to plot a choreography, she would always say, and this is a break in status quo, story doesn't go forward. So we are very, very much there. You also spoke about the somatic intelligence, the also about the very definition of the composite arts, which is to create in space and time with energy and movement. And if we don't have this space as we know it, the physical space, it's definitely a time for reinvention. And also a very important dinner table conversation that's happening across the world about choosing economics versus artistry, or should it be lives versus livelihood. I think those are questions that will keep coming up in the next few months. Thank you so much, Mahesh. We'll come back to you soon. Over to Shivani. Shivani, if you'd like to share a few thoughts about the subject.
So after hearing Mahesh, there's so many trains that have left the platform. Mahesh, you talked about equity coming into the picture. You also talked about the lack of predictability of this whole COVIDian period. Now, frankly, pre-COVIDian period also there have been crises. Demonetization was one huge crisis which we thought was going to hit us like how? And it did. Many people suffered unrepairable consequences, I suppose. But at the same time, resilience is something that is just unparalleled when it comes to the human being, and especially the creative human being. So maybe this whole period is one of, number one, giving the earth that opportunity to reclaim what is hers. Number two, removing the inequity which comes from divadom, establishment, the norm. Like for example, if you have a particular way of performing, a particular way of coming on stage or communicating with an audience, all those norms are broken now. So maybe someone who has no platform but that mobile platform, they can reach out and create a whole new vocabulary of creativity. The difficulty in this whole scenario is the economics of it all, because for those who have chosen to make the arts their livelihood, that is the difficulty. How do you translate from a train being fueled by a certain system to now become something that is not functioning because that system doesn't exist? So I think more than the creative aspect, it is the financial aspect of the creative world. Because when it comes to the stage or the space or the collective energy not existing, Madhu, recently I attended a healing session online, and frankly, I was very skeptical. It was Naad music. And really, the sounds and to lie down and to tune into that through Instagram was seeming very far away. And when I logged out, also, I said, this really didn't work for me. But the whole night and the next morning, I was in that space. So obviously, your take home is not what it is face to face, but there is something that's happening within your soul. Now, I mentioned to you that I'm looking after little 2-year-old kids through the study school. And it was great fun because I took over as director of the school about a year ago. And I had, like, suppose if it was the Ramayana, I made them into little ringa ringa roses of the families, the different wives, with Dashrath coming in, the Hanuman story, and the children loved it. So it was great fun to work in, the space and energy, the collective being together. And suddenly that's all taken away from us. A beautiful green campus, gardening space, yoga space, interaction between the children's space. And we've gone on to the virtual platform. So we're doing a virtual learning platform for the study school children. We've called it Ma'am, Dad, Mom, and Me, because now it's no longer about the teachers being able to deal with the children. We need to bring the parents into the picture. So earlier, if it was a performer and an audience, that's maybe not the vocabulary anymore. There has to be that curator. because curation is key. There is so much stuff available online. For example, going back to the children, there are unbelievable numbers of stories and educational tools and science experiments, even yoga classes. How do you curate it in such a way that the person who's sitting across that screen is mesmerized, or is taking in without even having to be mesmerized? With 2-year-old children, 3-year-old children, you don't want them stuck in front of a machine for 1 hour looking like that. You really want them to be able to go away and come back and take in something which is just part of the whole process and not necessarily be spoon fed. So from that point of view, my personal take is, because in life I've always been an optimist, that things will work out, all will be well, but it will not be the same. Well and same are two different things. It's going to be very different, especially for the next year. My God, there's going to be havoc. But I remember, Mahesh, when I was rehearsing for Dance Like a Man, and Lilette, Siddharth Basu, Joyce and Gupta, we were all working together. And Lilette, who was my director, would be traumatized, because every time we reached the end of the play, which was your climax, where Ratna had done something unforgivable, and I was playing that part of the younger Ratna, I would just freeze. And Lilette was so scared, because till the day before the show, I would not do that part. And then finally we went on stage. And frankly, it was the horror of what that part was. And I was feeling it so intensely, I could not express it. And there on the stage with the audience came out a performance that I would say was my lifetime performance. And so that space and that energy, my God, is it going to be missed? So also, Lynn, I've been so grateful to you for doing lights for shows that we work together on, because it really makes it. So that's the other thing. Sitting in your homes in front of a computer, how are you going to create a set? Not everybody's a Lynn Fernandez who has beautiful lighting, beautiful props, beautiful everything. So how are you, as a performer, going to engage with your audience? It almost has to be so deep and meaningful to you personally, that the other person gets that message. Because as a performer, I am not dancing because I am such a great dancer. I am dancing because I have something to say. And that meaning has to reflect in my work, so that the person who's watching it wants to watch it because they want to know that story. That's what I think. We just have to really reinvent the work that we are doing and the reason we are doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shivani. In fact, the other day, I think all of us artists are having these conversations about how does it feel sitting in your little bubble and then recording for, classes and everything. So I was saying it feels like, when we were younger, our generation used to watch this, Star Trek with Captain Spock seated inside this spaceship and looking at the world outside. And I'm just waiting for someone to say, like, beam me up, Scotty. Beam me up, Scotty. So, so, those days. Lynn, over to you. Would love to hear what you have in mind.
Okay, I won't go back to what Mahesh and Shivani have said. Both are, that is exactly what all of us are focusing on right now. That's also on my head. There was, because I don't know if you know, but I have a background in psychology. I worked with seriously disturbed adults for a very, very long time. So for me, it's the emotional well-being that becomes of primary importance in any such thing. At this moment, with the COVID crisis, we are all, it's probably it is the biggest disruptive event that this world has seen, and it's happened globally. It's right across the world. Everything has come to a standstill, and we are in a wonderful, there are two things I'm focusing on. One is we are in a wonderful position to literally rewrite where do we go from here. Because whatever was there last year or pre-COVID, before COVID, will never come back. It will never be the same. We're dealing with three paradigms, as it were. A friend of mine was talking to me about it, and it really made a lot of sense with regard to where we are right now. Is what we are dealing with right now is, or the only way to deal with where we are right now is now, after, and later. Those are the only three within that paradigm. Whenever we look at anything, we can only think about it like that, because we will never be in the back over there, which means right now, what we do right now, and I've interpreted to mean that what we are doing right now is, I believe, is we need to focus on ourselves. We need to focus on taking care of ourselves emotionally, physically, stopping, pausing, nourishing ourselves, so that we can be ready for the after. We don't know what after is going to be, or when after is going to be. Even for us, right, it's now. Till this now finishes, we are going to be in the now. And then after will be a time when we need to go back to livelihood. Livelihood is like really a huge deal for all of us, for all of us. And, you know, unless you have food to eat, unless you have a roof over your head, unless you're able to provide the economic security for your family, there's no art. You cannot make art. You cannot do. Those are all wonderful things that come later. So that's, I believe, is going to be the next stage that we need to focus on. And then later is when art and the making of art will happen. Now, I don't mean that we don't think about art, we don't start planning for it. But I really believe that at the moment, what we need to do as a community, since we're talking about live arts and performers, is to focus on ourselves, to stop, to breathe, to nourish ourselves, so that we are ready for the after that is going to come. The other thing is, which for me keeps coming back again and again, is that this is the biggest disruption that has ever happened in the history of this universe. And look at how wonderful it is that we have right now such a great, huge access to digital technology that never existed. Because it's there, I'm able to reach out and talk to my sisters who live in Canada. My Shurupa and the dancers are able to take classes for somebody who's sitting in South America. It's fantastic. I mean, just to be able to at least retain some level of normalcy using this technology that is available for us. And I think part of taking care of ourselves is to find normalcy within our everyday structure, to find some semblance of control, because everything is out of control right now. We just have no control over anything. We don't know when this lockdown will end. We don't know when we will be able to go back to performing. We don't know when people are even going to be allowed to come close enough to each other, etc., etc. So we have to find some way of bringing in some semblance of control and use all the means available to us. And we have the greatest means available to us right now, which is digital freedom. So yeah, that's what's going through my head at this moment when I'm thinking about the COVID crisis and how are we going to deal with it and what's going to happen with it.
Right. Thank you so much, Lynn. Actually, I remember that when each of us decided to be a dancer or a theater practitioner or a production designer, we all took a decision. I remember when I decided I wanted to become a dancer, I called my mother, made a trunk booking from Delhi. It was after the American Dance Festival. Shivani and I were together at Triveni, and I cried. I was all ready to sign up for an IIM CAT exam, etc. And I said, I want to become a dancer. Can I join the Choreography Institute again? And she said something to me which is sort of the crux of my belief, which she said, are you ready to choose creative satisfaction over monetary beliefs or monetary success? And I said, yes, I'm ready. I was ready. And that's why every single time there is a conference or when we are talking about lack of funding in India, I don't crib, because we all chose to do this. But somehow the challenges are getting harder and harder, especially as we've entered this 21st century. And although everybody takes the crux of culture, it is not given the importance that it should at such a strong undercurrent of our existence. So I'm going to just come back to Mahesh. And Lynn, I want to come back to you about, we'd spoken about disruption and how these times have really been a great equalizer, but with that it brought so many other issues, thrown up so many other issues. Mahesh, just wanted to ask you, you spoke about space as your quintessential canvas, and as a theater practitioner, or even when you visualize, when you write a script or you film, how would you now reframe this sort of displacement of space? And there was another question I wanted to ask you. As I'm talking to you, there are a lot of questions coming up, and there is a question here which is related to something, Mahesh, you will be, we were talking about livelihood. All of us are talking about that too. That there are many groups and artists who are offering online classes and performances. In fact, Bolshoi, NCP, everybody is offering free viewership and films. Now, I think the Cannes Film Festival was also out there to be viewed. There is a question connected to that, Mahesh. One is about, it's two-pronged, your question. One is about the space itself, and one is about livelihood. So there's a young writer who's Nayantara, who sent in a question which says, keeping in mind the present situation and assuming that audiences are going to get smaller, how do we monetize and sustain our practice? And can we still look at the same avenues? She's asking whether it's interim or are we looking at a long-term change?
Well, it's very hard for me to say whether it's interim or long term. We don't know what the situation is. But as Lynn said, that maybe we can utilize this time for introspection. For those of us who have the luxury to do it, if we have enough subsistence for a few months or so. But if you're really sort of strapped for cash, I think online classes are a great way of earning some income. And I think it's great that the world famous companies are throwing their digital stuff free to all of us, because somewhere I think we need to look at art through new eyes. We need to see what is it that the digital medium has captured about art. Like if I'm to watch a National Theatre live production on my screen, why am I watching that and not watching, let's say, an action film or a film which uses the screen as a medium much better, whereas the watching something like NT Live or the Bolshoi just makes me wistful and wish for being able to be there and see it live, right? But I think it's again still a transitionary period, and I think we'll come to terms with the fact that yes, we're missing something. Something is definitely lost in translation. But then we will think about how do we make this translation better? How do we make this translation more effective? And I think every performance in that sense is a translation. Every audience is new. You could do the same dance piece over and over again for 20 different audiences, and they're going to receive it in a different way. The performers are going to perform it differently, right? So I think we've come to a phase where difference is thrust upon us. And how does this translate to a different work of art? We need not call it theater. We need not call it a dance performance. It could be something else. So maybe this is a good opportunity for all these lines and boundaries to blur. Here we are talking about future like an economist would, or as a philosopher would. And I think the fact is that everything is connected. So I think the interconnectedness of all these branches of sciences and art and philosophy and spirituality will create something new. So coming back to the question of subsistence, sustaining yourself, I think just keep your eyes and ears open for opportunities, and who knows, new ones may emerge. And I think we just need to sort of prepare ourselves for that.
Thank you, Mahesh. Yes, I think a lot of rethinking needs to be done, and we have to sort of stay positive. Another sort of challenge of this whole adage about fire in our bellies, right? So, it's kind of on turbo power at the moment, I would think. Thank you so much, Mahesh. We'll
Yeah,
come back to you. Lynn, apart from heading an institution like Nrityagram, a world-class performing unit also that you have, you're touring all the time. You're also mentor to many dancers and artists, and very fondly referred to as Lynn Amma by many youngsters. I've heard that. I wanted to ask, in a time of such fractured connections, this increased, mental imbalances, low morale amongst dancers, what kind of challenges do you think the arts community is facing? What are the conversations that are going on? And what is it as a community? Yes, we're thinking of subsistence, we're thinking of our art, but what about our emotional health too?
Yeah, the dance community particularly, I think, and maybe it's true for performers in general, actually, because we get out there, you're performing, you're playing a character, you're somebody on that stage. We're used to putting away, and we all grow up with this whole thing of the show must go on. No matter what happens, show must go on. And people just carry on because without paying attention to or ignoring or putting on a back burner what may be going on inside them. But this time is unlike anything we have ever faced. I mean, if you think about it, the whole world is fearful. We are living in this state of fear, all of us, for different reasons. It could be of life, it could be of livelihood, it could be of the future, it could be of anything. We're all dealing with grief at a really deep level. We've lost everything that we've known as normal forever. It will never come back. We're all having to deal with that grief. We're all grieving about and worrying about the possibility of loss that may happen. So, with performers, it becomes very easy to ignore it and carry on and think about subsistence and, what am I going to do in the future? I must create a new work. I must do this. I must do that. But I really think we need to break open this conversation, especially amongst performers, specifically amongst dancers, about our emotional well-being and emotional health. It's extremely more important right now for each one to be aware of what's going on with them, because you can't continue to create great work if you are totally fractured and breaking up inside. And I think that is the most important thing, which is what in Nrityagram we are trying to do, is to get people to focus in and look at what's going on with them, to create a semblance of as much normalcy, bring back our... Okay, so I'm going to digress a little bit. In right now, Shurupa and 3 of the ensemble dancers are in the campus. We are in a very unique position in that they are being able to rehearse together live, right? So after the first 2 weeks, we were going nuts. We were trying to figure out, how to do jhadu, poncha, cooking, this thing, that thing, looking after the garden. So everything was completely upside down. Once that was done, we decided, okay, let's bring back some semblance of normalcy, some semblance of control into our lives. So the first thing we did was their classes, whether it was their yoga or their body conditioning or, their general rehearsal, basic training, choreography, whatever it was that they did in their life, we brought it back in place. We started doing things like I host a dinner every Sunday. We're 10 of us who are living here right now. Every Sunday I host a dinner party. Everybody dresses up. They come to my house. We play music, usually very dodgy music, because there's always arguments about what is it that we should be playing. People get together and bring recipes for cocktails or, do stuff like that. We laugh. It's some semblance of some kind of peacefulness, some kind of happiness, some kind of joy, because otherwise we are all burdened with what's going on everywhere. So that's been the main thing, is to try and get people to focus on emotional health. we're trying to carry it over a little bit, so spread it to our immediate community. So the dancers outside who are not here with us, who are off-site, our ammas who have been sent home on vacation, just staying in touch with them. It's just a question of making a call every 2 or 3 days. Are you guys all right? Is everything okay at home? Do you need anything? Can we do anything for it? It's just small little things to try and build and keep our community together and bring that sense of some kind of stability that somebody may need to reach out, and also encouraging them that, listen, pass it forward. If there's somebody, if there's somebody in your village who doesn't have food to eat because people have lost jobs and don't have money, give them a meal, because you are privileged, you are earning, you're continuing to earn. Share with somebody else. So we have to, we're trying in small ways whatever we can around it, and I think each of us really has to do that. I think that's the only possibility at this stage, because we've never seen anything like this, and I'm not sure any one of us knows or has any kind of answers around it. We just have to find our own ways of doing things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lynn. And that's so pertinent and poignant too, because, the other day, Dr. Anita Ratnam was in conversation. In fact, she had a question connected to that, more a statement that if each of us is alone, how are we dealing with this? And also she was saying that, it's time that dancers and artists, performers took away the mirror from themselves and sort of faced it outside, and looked at what is going on. And I think a whole lot of us are also, as Mahesh has to rush off after this meeting because he has some air supplies coming in to help people who need essentials. This conference itself is raising funds for rural artists of Karnataka. And it brings us back to a conversation Shivani and I were also having about enjoying and nurturing and cherishing experiences. We somehow, in this chaos and cacophony of modern day life, we somehow seem to have lost till everything came to a standstill, like these little picnics we went for as children with our parents, or more and more people, like Lynn, as you said, are going to be coming home, and we are going to visit people and really reconnect. And since it's the Dr. Myra conference, I'd like to, just before I go to Shivani, share a little anecdote about her. She was quite a encyclopedia, as you know, of knowledge, and also all these adages and other things. So I remember as a little girl, I was all of maybe 14 or 15 and getting ready for my 10th standard exams. And the Bolshoi Ballet came to Delhi, and they were presenting Swan Lake. And as you know, Maiji had worked with, while she was in Gittis, with Bolshoi and the Riga Ballet with Shakuntala. So the ballerinas and everybody came home, and they said to the interpreter, little girl, you're going to come and watch us tomorrow. It was in Kamani, we didn't have Siri Fort yet. So I said to them, no, I have a maths exam. And I grew up in a very middle-class Delhi Patodi house community where you had to score, Shivani, the pressure of those days. And I said, I'm not coming. So my mother tried to bribe me and say, Acha, tum aogi, to I'll take you to Bengali market for chaat if you come. So, and so on and so forth. This went on. And then she said, Dekho, maybe tomorrow you might not do well. I know you will not flunk, but you might not do too well. Yes, your score will come down, but you will never get to watch the Bolshoi Ballet now, as you see it in its prime, because in a few months they may be no red flag, there may be no Soviet Union. This quality you will not see. And I went and saw it. And at that moment I got it, that always choose an experience over everything else, whether it's hoarding or what people expect of you. And ironically, 4 years ago we went to Russia, and Swan Lake was playing at Bolshoi, and we had to buy tickets in black at some $170 and sit on one side, and the other person is dancing. What is she doing? And so the thing is, yeah. So that's I think this great equalizer called COVID has also sort of put us all in that same space. Shivani, I'd like to ask you, like I mentioned before, you're such an intersectionist. You're straddling the performing arts, policy making, the educational system, presenting at least, I say, repeat, at least 5 events a week. And you're physically there. I've seen you move from place to place, from countries to countries, overnight. how are you coping with this scenario, with this concept of live art doesn't exist, events don't exist? And also, I'd like you to share something about, you had a very interesting anecdote about this study school project.
So, Madhu, with regard to how am I coping, like life hasn't been busier. I wake up in the morning and I have this routine, which is something that I've not given to myself in ever since the kids came along. Because with children in the house and a husband who's got a very dynamic career and your own ambitions where you don't want to stop dancing or stop doing theater or stop reinventing yourself, it becomes very demanding on the individual. So for me, to really give that time to rejuvenate was not happening. So this COVIDian period I've used to do the Ayurvedic oil pull, where you put oil in your mouth for 20 minutes and swirl it around. During that swirling time, I chant. And I'm finding that this chanting, prayer, or maybe it could just be even just breathing for someone who doesn't want to chant, is tremendously empowering. So for me, I do this, then I do my yoga, then, oh my God, I have to be set for the online class with the little children. So, and then after that, there's some event. The events industry has been having lots of conversations about connecting and what the future holds and what are the opportunities that can be found in this whole period. So they've needed people to present those and weave them together. So it's been quite as if I'm working, and with this whole platform of digital freedom, Lynn said this. And from her saying how we have this digital platform, I would like to say we need to really go deep into gratitude. This digital platform is not something that can be taken for granted. It really wasn't there. The whole world has come to a standstill and the whole world is connected. My husband's in an international arbitration today. He's got his lawyers and arbitrators from all over the world and they're functioning. So that's a privilege. And in my work on Draupadi, when we did the play Draupadi Will My Spirit Live On back in 2010, it was a play where the first performance didn't match the last performance because every time we did it, it evolved. And through our journey of performances, and Mahesh, I don't know if you remember, but I came to you sometime in 2008, 2009 saying, help me put this script down to paper. But whoever tried to help me, and you really did, you always have, attending your workshop also, a playwright's workshop, my God, what an inspiration. I never thought I had it in me to write anything because I was always the performer. But the play was inside my head. And no matter how much I told people and how great they thought the idea was, they couldn't go inside my head and put it down on paper. So Draupadi then came out, and I had this director from South Africa called Tina Johnson. And Tina and I, my God, if you saw us together, you guys know Dilip Shankar. We've all worked with him. And Dilip was Krishna in the play, and I was the old Draupadi. There was a new Draupadi too, because we brought Draupadi into modern times. And Dilip always said, it's really hard for both of you to work together because you're at loggerheads. And because of that, the manthan, what comes out is sheer magic. So we brought out the best in each other. And it was really a hard journey. And it was 6 months. I had scheduled for our performance in Jan, but it took us 6 months from having written the play to creating it into a performance. And during that journey, the cast and crew of 16 gave of their time and their lives so completely. And the essence of Draupadi, eventually, after a series of performances, was forgiveness. And forgiveness roots from gratitude. So I think in these times also, this manthan is going to be very tough, and it's going to be a grind which sort of takes from you maybe what you're not prepared to give even. But as Lynn said, you have to keep a good mind space. When you say the show must go on, I mean, who on earth would have had travel cancelled, shows cancelled, work cancelled, everything that was the essence of our existence cancelled, and for no fault of ours. So in a sense, you really realize what is this cosmos about. So maybe that this is very easy for someone who doesn't have to worry about their next meal to say, and for someone who's walking home hundreds of kilometers, not sure if they'll ever get there, it's a different thing. But it really is a rethink. And the world is not going to be as populated as it is. It's a burden that the earth cannot take. Ushma prachand ho rahi, vanaspatiyan lupt ho rahi. I did Prakriti in Sweden, and it was a trilingual production. And when I would perform it, it would disturb me so deeply because none of us are ready to take cognizance of what we are doing to the earth. We talk about it, we debate it, but even in these COVIDian times, we're talking about getting back to the normal consumption, the normal appetite, the normal existence. But is that normal sustainable? Is something that maybe nature will show us.
Absolutely, Shivani. I think also well said about friction and churning as important, catalysts for the new normal. Maybe not the same normal that we knew earlier, which was definitely, as you said, about overconsumption. But people are consuming art very differently, and as we've noticed, there've been these little stickers about how during these times everyone's turned to the arts, whether it's dance, watching dance, theater, film, painting, reading. Everybody has gone back to it. And so I had an interesting question. So I'm just getting some messages saying that we're running out of time. So if we can do a quick round, whoever wants to answer it, just tell me. There are some interesting questions. This is from the short version of a question from Aarti Vig, who works in the bridging both the corporate and NGO world. And she says, can art help humanity become more resilient to self-destruction? I think echoes something of what Lynn said. Any of you want to answer that? Mahesh?
Absolutely. I think the function of the arts is the aesthetic experience that takes you outside yourself. I mean, you had the Greek concept of catharsis, where huge drama, tragedy, and loss, and bodily harm and death were played out to evoke these emotions in you, and in a way, sort of help you heal yourself. I think Lynn is spot on that at this point we're looking at self-healing. We as artists, how do we heal ourselves? But I think that's the purpose of art, is to heal. Even if you look at the rasas, just the evoking of those strong sentiments and the experience that goes beyond your own life experiences sometimes can take you out of your head and put you in a rightful position in the world. It can elevate you completely. So I think definitely that's a very interesting question. And I firmly believe, even if I sound a little romantic, art can heal.
Absolutely. You're so right about that. Yes. And we all believe that, and the limitless possibilities that art offers us every day in our lives. And definitely, about the role arts have to play now, from not just being virtuoso and gorgeous to look at, to being relevant and also enter the area of healing. There's another question from Masum Parmar, and any of us can answer that. And he says, actually, there are two questions that have come from from another wonderful, very dynamic person, Umang Bedi of Daily Hunt. So I'll read them both. They're similar. So the artist is asking, the arts, like the rest of society, is a field with extreme social injustice. What kind of collaborative financial models can we reimagine to create a level playing field for the arts? Because we're all going to be rushing for the same platforms, like earlier to Sabhas or whatever, and now whatever the new normal brings. And Umang's question is, how would you reimagine, rethink the world of arts and performing arts after COVID to be more equitable, more varied, more democratized, and less winner take it all? Arts, though nurtures society, has not received its due and credit in India. Considering the already dwindling funding before COVID, how will we save and further promote art forms that were already on the verge of being lost? We could all take a shot at this if you'd like.
Should I go?
Yeah.
Yes, please, Lynn. Yeah.
So with reference to, I'll start with about the funding and financial situation, because that is the one that is like a major crisis staring almost all of us right now. And that is, I think, like I said earlier, this is the disruption is caused, it will cause us to rewrite everything. And I think we need to rewrite this part of it all also. Whatever happens later is not going to be what happened in 2019. The same structures will not exist and should not exist. Whatever they were, we need to throw them away. Good, bad, ugly, we need to throw them away and rewrite the structures. I think in the old days, because, and I'm talking now with reference to the classical arts, for instance, because we moved from patronage of the courts and patronage of the Maharajas to, it went to the government became the new patron. And unfortunately in our country, our government, the government or government servants still consider themselves to be Maharajas in this situation. It's not that they are, that this is an industry as much as any other industry in this country. And we have rights. There are certain rights we have. There are certain, if I pay my taxes, there are certain things you give me back from the government. Government's attitude has been that, oh man, I'm doing dan, I'm giving you from. So it's the same attitude that is followed. And I think we need to rewrite that. We need to remove this dependence on government and patronage, etc. I'm not sure what the answer is exactly, but I really think we need to start searching how, and it has to come from within us. It has to come from within our community. We need to rewrite it together. To listen to what the younger generation is talking about, people who are established are talking about, whoever's willing to have a conversation, we really need to rewrite it.
Yes. Thanks, Lynn. Does anyone want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, so I was trying to help muster some resources together, whether it was for getting PPE equipment for doctors, or it was to get some rations organized for migrant workers. And it was, you call up the people or you knock on the doors that you think might be those traditional avenues where support would come for such projects. Friends, family, whatever. And of course, everyone came forth. But a young boy who works for me, he set up an online fundraising campaign. He, along with some young people, connected with networks that could do food distribution. And through this month, they actually created an infrastructure to distribute food. And they had tiny, tiny donations, which I think way surpassed anything that I might have, or the group of people who we were working together might have put together. So as you said, Lynn, there is a whole new way of doing things. So, the scalability, number one, we are looking at metropolitan cities where the consumption has an overload. For example, when I was talking about the study school's virtual learning platform, virtual learning is something that's happening in metropolitan cities, but tier 2, tier 3 cities are not as on the ball with virtual classes. So similarly for performers or artists, maybe they can look at methods of reaching out to an audience which is not your traditional audience, engaging them with a lecture, learn, see and do. Because when we did Khubsurat in the early 90s, it was a television program where we brought fashion, fitness, modeling, all to the fore, which was not the normal consumption of an average Indian television watcher. And the program was a tremendous hit. But a year later, when we inserted a part about you can be part of this, you can send in your photographs, you can be selected as the model of the week, the whole appetite for the program changed. So I think this period is one where it's not going to be I am the performer and you are the audience. It's going to be I am the custodian of this knowledge. I will share it with you and maybe we can create something together. For that, there could be a revenue structure worked out. I mean, it's just a thought. It's just a thought. Maybe even an egalitarian place. an egalitarian platform where it doesn't matter the level of performer that you are or the level of knowledge bank that you are. There's an egalitarian amount that any person who aspires, like an Uber, if you're the driver who's available at that time, someone can tap into you. So if you're a performer or an artist or a curator or a mentor who's available at that time, that person can tap into your resource. So that's just a thought, because frankly, there's no clear way.
True. Thanks, Shivani. I think clearly creating ecosystems and also taking ownership about this and moving towards a more egalitarian structure is definitely the need of the hour. One last word from Mahesh, and we really have to wrap up because after this there is a film waiting to be shown, and there's so much more to be said. Mahesh, I think we'll let you wrap this. Full mandala. We started with you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for the privilege. Kill me for being an idealist because we're talking about ecosystems now. Is that what I envision and what would be great is some kind of a global artists union. I think we are on the verge of economic ruin, but we're also on the verge of an economic revolution. And especially since we have the digital platforms available. Now, how this union works is that every patron who pays for either a particular artistic performance or makes a donation, the money goes into this union. And then at some given period, every month or every 3 months, the money is equitably distributed to all the artists belonging to that union. So if you paid $200, or now it's probably, I paid $500 for Hamilton, is that money then will go into the union and it will be equitably distributed. So it may become a win-win. It's a bit like restaurants where the tips that the waiters collect go into a kitty, and at the end of the day, the tips are shared equally amongst everyone. So maybe that's just an idealistic vision. Kill me, but on that note, I think it'll be nice to leave with a dream.
Thank you, Mahesh. I'm sure Maya ji is smiling at you because she was a quasi-socialist. So, and I think this sort of dystopian
I didn't want to use the S word. Yeah.
It's out there. We said it
made
now.
a comment that. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Just before we do conclude this, Madhu, I'd like to say something. Just remembering Maya ji, it was a huge privilege to know her, to have stayed with you while she was there, and to have had your friendship, to have known that you're a safe custodian to hold the keys of this legacy, and the way you have carried it forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. And on that note, I think all of us are idealists, and we do believe utopia exists in the art field, and that we will all strive towards that. Thank you so much. When I started off with this thought, a lot of people said, "Oh my God, this is going to be like a lot of complaining." I said, "No, not these panelists, because they are strong individuals." And all of you, thank you so much. You spoke about solutions, you spoke about possibilities, you spoke about strength and resilience. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Shivani, for being with us for being such an important part of this conference. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thanks, Madhu.
Thank you.
Before we arrive at the last part of tonight's event, I'd like to reiterate that this event is two-pronged. On one hand is the conference, and the other is a fundraiser for the folk artists of Karnataka. It's a well-known fact that Guru Maya Rao and her husband M.S. Natarajan held very close to their heart the cause, the art and the livelihoods of the folk artists of India. Both of them worked extensively with folk, operatic and ritual artists of Karnataka to help rejuvenate their art and to keep their legacy alive. And given the circumstance, the present scenario, our folk performers are like daily wage workers, like we artists are. They perform and then they earn their livelihood and can go buy the ration for the family. As you know, the whole ritual of gathering is prohibited for the moment as we combat COVID together. We have joined hands with a wonderful researcher, dancer, Sneha Kaparna, who also comes from a family engaged for several decades with folk performers. Sneha has helped us identify families and about 100 odd artists who are in dire need of funds. Time and again you will see a link that is going to take you to a fundraiser to help these artists for the next few months before they can start performing again. Please contribute, no amount is small, and do pass the word about this COVID fundraising for folk artists of Karnataka. And without taking any more of your time, I'd like to introduce you to Sneha Kaparna. Sneha is a Bharatanatyam dancer, a choreographer, educator, and also a researcher who is very passionately involved with the folk artists of Karnataka. She has transferred several of these choreographies on urban dancers in order to create perpetuity for the forms. And more, which you will see in this film where she speaks about her passion and shares with us the lives and the art of the folk and ritualistic performers of Karnataka.
Namaskara. I'm very honored to be part of this digital conference being hosted by Natya and STEM Company. I'd like to talk to all of you about the folk, traditional and ritualistic art forms from Karnataka. The moment I hear the word folk, the first thing that comes to my mind is a Kannada word called Tayi Beru. Tayi Beru literally means the mother root. Folk is definitely the root for all folk and art forms that we see today. It is an unbroken chain, the crucial link, or in fact a living chronicle of mankind or the human psyche. When we look at internationally and try to understand folk, they define it in very simple terms. They call folk as something that is social, recreational, or even non-professional, and other parameters that they do add is something that uses vernacular language and regional music. But the moment we start moving towards the Orient and more towards India, the definition of folk gets a little too complicated. It is a myriad ethnocentric complexities all put together. When we say folk, there comes with it a big gamut of history, customs, beliefs, rituals. Everything comes into being. Caste, customs, which are all part and parcel of the Indian, beautiful Indian psyche. It is all part of the beautiful Indian cultural psyche, I would say. Along with it, there are the innumerable costumes, colors, language, instruments, and varieties in choreography, step, language, so much of accents, and each tribe having its own defined cultural scenario. The geographical barriers that we see today were very different hundreds and thousands of years ago. So there is a lot of cross-exchange or cross-cultural carryover that we see. And it's so beautiful to see folk forms that have taken and given from other parts of the country too. When we start looking at Karnataka more closely, we can look and understand Karnataka by looking at it in 4 different sections. To the top we have Uttar Karnataka. This Uttar Karnataka belt is a very dry land. But from this dry land we have the very robust people, the very young, and I would say very energetic and loud people, if I can say so. And then we move to the coastal Karnataka called as the Karavali region. And in this Karavali region we have a more of a classically tuned or people who are educated, who are more into literature. And then we come to Malenadu, or the great Western Ghats section. And in this section, because it is so thick of forest, we see the most variety of folk forms of Karnataka. In fact, we see a lot of folk forms that are influenced by tantric practice, occult practice happening here in this Malenadu region. Then we come to Bailsime, or the plains, the plateau area. And here it is very flat land. So the forms that have come from here always have exaggerated properties, they don't want to keep a small thing on their head. They would go for a enormous thing, that weighs 25 kgs and more than 5 feet to be balanced on their head. A mask will not be a simple mask that just fits their face. It's going to be a big, enormous mask that has to weigh more than 8 kgs and extend up to 3 to 4 feet, like the Somana Kunita. These beautiful forms have taken from each of this region, and these regions were of course affected by the different kings who ruled in the past, the different sampradaya and parampara that was coming because of the river culture, we call it, because of the rivers that was influencing the growth of all of these people. When we look at Karnataka and try to figure out how many forms we have, the number itself is very mind-boggling. According to Professor Borlingaya, who is the former Vice Chancellor of Hampi University, who has been one of the first scholars to work extensively in folk and documented, there are over 190 forms. And let me tell you, when we travel across India, people hardly know 1 or 2 forms from Karnataka, which is very surprising and tells so much about the awareness that needs to be created about folk forms from our very own Karnataka. And when we talk about folk, there are several verticals to folk. There are the folk songs, there's the folk dance, there's the folk theatre, folk puppetry. These all come under the performing scenario, whereas there are so many other things like folk games, folk rituals, folk stories, folk epics. Those are all also part of the umbrella term that we term as folk. Now when we look at just folk music, folk dance and folk theatre, innumerable forms. Let me just tell a word or two about few so you can get an idea. When we talk about folk theatre, Shri Krishna Parijata, Radhanat, Doddata, Bailata, Sannata, these are all the different traditional folk theatres that we have in Karnataka. This was the precursor to the other forms that are gaining more popularity today, whether it is Yakshagana or even this is something that developed into Ramanat and Krishnanat and became Kathakali. These particular folk forms, folk theatre forms, are alive even to this day. The plays are done overnight. The artist, which is very shocking to share with all of you, are uneducated in the modern sense of the word, but they can recite the entire act that happens over a night without blinking an eye. They are so well versed in what they are doing. When we look at folk music, some of the rare forms that we have from here are Neelgaru, Gigi Pada, Chaudke Mela, which are all so beautiful. Karadi Manchlu, Gondaligaru, Chittu Mela, each unique in its own form, style and content, now coming from different districts and regions of Karnataka. Some of the forms that we are all trying to help out through this COVID crisis fall into this folk music category. For example, the Chit Mela. The Chit Mela is the folk orchestra. They are a group of 7 men in which the lead is a Shahnai. And when he plays, the rest of them play their drums and move around like small butterflies. That is why it is also called as Chitte Mela. When we come to folk dances, it is just one of the wonders, I can tell you, of India, that we have so much culture and so much variety. And in Karnataka, folk dances are brilliant because they are very exotic too. When we talk about percussion based arts, there is the Dollu Kunita, which is now picked up and become very popular. There is the Jaggalige. Jaggalige is one of the other troops that we are trying to reach out. Halgi means Halge or Halgi means big percussion instruments. These percussion instruments are like enormous. They are about 5 feet and they have to roll it on the streets while playing it. That is why it's called as Jaghadiye, the huge percussion instruments. They play it in group of 20-30 men. You can only imagine the sound that resonates from it. There's the Patadu Kunita, which is the huge poles that are carried by men. They were like the lanchanas, like before the deity is taken out in a procession. These were all street forms or street fair based forms wherein they would herald the god that is about to come. They would perform with these long bamboo sticks going over 10 to 15 feet height, posted in a pouch, while all the time, swinging their towels and never missing a beat. Then there is the beautiful Kamsale, which is a martial art from Karnataka. Puja Kunita, Somana Kunita. We have so many forms. Coming back to what we are trying to do at this conference, I would like to say a few words about the artists that we are reaching out to. Out of the innumerable 190 forms, we worked and selected about 10 different families, and I would like to say a word about these particular forms that we have picked up. One of them is the Lambani Nritya. The Lambanis are the gypsies. So when you listen to the language, you can see a total Mishrana, that is, you have little bit of Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati, Marwadi, all mixed into it. So you feel like you know something, but it's not that, That just shows their gypsy nature. They move from one place to another. So there's a whole group and tribe that has settled down in Karnataka, and the Lambanis have become part of Karnataka's heritage. This is one troop that we are reaching out to. The other one is Chaudike Meda. Chaudike is a unique instrument of Karnataka. It's a stringed instrument based out of a ektara that is very unique to Karnataka. The Chaudike and the Jokti Nritya are both closely related. They're all done by devotees of Yellamma. Yellamma is one of the deities that is worshipped in Karnataka. The story of how Parashurama beheaded, we're all familiar with that, but that led to this Jokti Rata, which is performed by the third gender, which is again something very unique, that very few forms that we can say so in the entire country. So we have 2 or 3 families that we have identified for performing and learning this form. And then we have Goravara Kunita. Now this Goravara Kunita is a has a very beautiful story behind it, about how Shiva came in the form of Goravaya and then tried to win the heart of Tuppada Mallamma. So for this, he is the local shaman, who can predict and take away your bad dreams. Apart from that, we have also a Togul Bombay artist with us. Togul Bombay is leather puppetry. Initially, this whole group used to work with the skin of certain animals. Now that the skin is being banned, they are not able to produce these particular kind of puppetry. The alternative skin that has been given to them is not as effective as the one they have. The folk artists are suffering the most. First of all, there has been no funds, and they're always treated as second grade artisans and always kept at the steps and outside the male cultural events. Most of these folk dances come from marginal society. They come from completely unorthodox way of learning, but their knowledge should not be questioned. Their access to the art has only been through oral tradition. So it's very important and crucial to keep up these families, to keep them safe. Due to the COVID crisis now, several of these families are having the worst of times. With this economic meltdown, we really don't know how far they'll be able to recover. And if one generation of folk artists are wiped out, probably we'll never be able to revive this, because there has been very less documentation or research work done on them. It's a very crucial time, like how we keep talking about saving our natural resources. This is something that we all need to reach out to. A great initiative that has been taken by Madhuna Trach and her team. It's a crucial time to save our cultural heritage. I request all of you to please donate for this cause and help us reach out to these authentic families. Namaskar.
And that brings us to the end of day one of the Dr. Maya Rao Kathak and Choreography Conference. I'd like to tell you that tomorrow also we have a wonderful lineup of artists, of panel discussions and presentations. Tomorrow is special for us because it's also Dr. Maya Rao's birthday. Had she been with us in her physical form, she would be 92 years old. Tomorrow we have a panel discussion moderated by Dr. Anita Ratnam featuring Rajiv Menon, Sridevi Deshpande and Shiva Natarajan. We also have a presentation by Sandhya Mendonça and a film by Sayyid Salahuddin Pasha. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us, and we hope you will join us tomorrow with some more family and friends as we journey through the Dr. Maya Rao Kathak and Choreography Conference 2020 in its digital avatar. Thank you and namaskar.
Thank you.